I have 100% every single Devil May Cry game available apart from 2, and with that came hundreds of hours of grinding.
Yes! Finally! Never been able to do that. Yes! The second worst mission in the game is finally done.
Rage.
Build style against enemies that are designed to not let you build style. Look at that. That's ridiculous.
Depression.
Give me it, please. Can you just give me the trophy? Just give me the trophy. Thank you. I'm so sick of this fucking game.
Desperation.
And I'm fucking done, and I don't ever have to play this game ever again. I don't know how I got an S rank with a C, but I don't care. Holy fuck. I'm so glad this is almost done.
And then finally acceptance as I continue to chip away my life for some virtual goal that doesn't even have any real meaning.
Holy fucking shit. Oh, I'm never playing this game again.
That has been my life since I first platinumed Devil May Cry 1 in 2023 and to now. Over my time with 100%ing these games, I have had to dedicate many hours of my life I will never get back. I've had to grind these same missions over and over and over, honing my skills to finally get that S rank. I've had to learn the games, their enemies, and their techniques from front to back, and I've had to practice the characters for hours at a time. If someone were to come up to me and ask if dedicating so much time to a video game's virtual trophy was worth it, I'd say no. Don't get me wrong, I love Devil May Cry, it's my favourite game series of all time, and I've gladly poured hundreds of hours of my life into these games. But the amount of stress I put on myself mentally to get these platinums is something I wouldn't recommend to anyone. Yeah, sure, I wanted to 100% these games, but I shouldn't have put so much self-made stress onto myself about it. I should have enjoyed my time with the games instead of using them as something to measure my own self-value out of. These platinums took their toll on me, both physically and mentally. It would be all I would do day and night apart from things like college. Any and all free time was spent grinding hours of the day away for these games. That doesn't mean I regret what I did, far from it. 100% in these games is without a doubt one of the most proudest accomplishments I feel like I have ever done. I love these games and wanted to complete that love by 100%ing them. If there's one good thing that came from all that time spent dedicating my whole soul to these games, is that I now feel like I have enough experience and knowledge to comfortably rank these games and do them justice in each ranking I give them. Some of the games I absolutely adore, some of them I'm indifferent towards, and some I actively despise, and what better way to show that than some lazy tier list video. This goes without saying, but these are just my opinions and views built from my own personal experiences with the series. I am not saying that you need to feel the same way as I do, I am not saying liking certain games over others makes you wrong, I am simply just sharing my own feelings towards the series as a whole.
Let's rock, baby.
Starting right from the beginning is Devil May Cry for the PlayStation 2. Created in 2001, Devil May Cry was originally meant to be Resident Evil 4, but strayed too far from what Resident Evil's set tone was. Devil May Cry set the standard for future action games and became a cult classic at the same time, being played even today. Devil May Cry was the first in its series, and while the game is certainly a lot more simpler than its future entries would come to be, Devil May Cry is still a beast of a game offering a fun, mainly fair and challenging experience. Devil May Cry as a whole is the rare few video games where the cop-out phrase "get good" actually has some merit behind it, since that's quite literally the way to go. Everything in Devil May Cry is created for you to be able to deal with it just with the know-how and a little bit of skill. You can become unstoppable, and this really becomes apparent in the later games. Devil May Cry offers multiple guns, weapons, and the ever so OP Devil Trigger mode. This game is a complete package and doesn't have any microtransactions, unlike 4 and 5 which do. However, as good as this game is, it's not perfect, in fact far from it. While the game has aged relatively well, there are certain things that don't feel great by today's standards. First of all, the camera. Like a majority of these very early 2000s games, they still followed the same fixed camera angle system many games before it did, such as Silent Hill and Capcom's very own Resident Evil. While this is nothing game breaking and the camera can screw you because it will change your direction when swapping to a different camera if you aren't prepared for it, it also keeps enemies out of view which can get annoying, or even worse, block Dante from view altogether. Another issue I have with the game is some of the enemies. While most of the demons in this game are fun to fight, some are simply annoying. Enemies that come to mind that aren't fun to fight are definitely the Sin Scissors, Blades, and the worst boss fight in the whole game being Mundus' first fight. It's a slog of a boss where the player has to give themselves carpal tunnel trying to kill him. Sure, there's a way to make it easier by using your Devil Trigger attack constantly, but it's still a horrible boss fight. People give other bosses shit, and some of them are well deserved, but this one isn't talked about that much. Overall, the gameplay is tough but fair. The game is hard right from the get-go and it doesn't let up. It might feel like it is, but in reality that's just you getting better at the game and there's no better feeling. There's even multiple difficulties which have their own rewards, which every subsequent game would follow up on. Devil May Cry was the first in the series, it was the first Devil May Cry game I played, and while it might not be as good as the future games, it still holds a place in the top action games of all time and started the whole series. And for that it's great, but really overshadowed by its later entries. I'll be putting it in A tier. Ah yes, the black sheep of the series. I won't be spending too much time on this one as literally anyone and everyone who is at least somewhat familiar with the games will know for a fact that this game is shit on constantly, and rightfully so. Ugly, slow, clunky, and incredibly boring to play, DMC2 is the worst game in the series for the sole reason that the gameplay sucks and is incredibly bad, which in a game all about intense, in-depth gameplay is arguably the worst thing it could be. The bosses suck, the enemies don't feel good to fight against, Dante feels even worse, I don't even care about Lucia, and overall the game is just an awful time and would tell everyone just getting into DMC to avoid wasting your time with this game. And is the one game out of the whole series I refuse to platinum for these reasons alone. Some disagree and despite its flaws like DMC2, and while I personally disagree wholeheartedly, I respect the fact they could do that. They managed to do something I couldn't and for that they have bested me. If there was anything slightly positive to say about DMC2 is that it led to the masterpiece that is Devil May Cry 3. Devil May Cry 3 is widely considered, if not unanimously agreed upon, as the series' golden child. Not only did it make up for the piece of shit game that is DMC2, it completely revived the series in a whole new way, changing how it would play forever. Devil May Cry 3 saw how bad DMC2 was, and the director, Hideki Itsuno, decided he couldn't let his career be stained by such a game, and did a complete 180, creating the best game in the series, and directing each game after 3. Not counting the reboot, making DMC what it is today. Devil May Cry 3 took the star mechanic from the first two games and increased it by 100. Dante was now younger, just starting out, yet still incredibly over the top, and this is where he would wear his best design in my opinion. Not only was Dante more stylish, but so was the gameplay. The gameplay changed in a way so different from the first two games and created arguably the best, most fun combat game ever made. More skills, more weapons, the introduction to different styles, and the gameplay changes they bring. The bosses were back and better than ever. Instead of being mind-numbingly easy, they are now ball-explodingly hard, yet fair. The story acts as a prequel to the first game. Dante is younger, less experienced, albeit still the coolest motherfucker in the world. They build up on Virgil, who gets Dante to come meet him before attempting to kill him for his necklace. One which Virgil has himself, and one the parents gave them. Then there's Lady, Arkham, Agni and Rudra, her, him, even you. A lot of back and forth goes on and then the game ends with the two brothers battling out before eventually Virgil is stopped by Dante, leaving them a tearful goodbye as they part ways and a great ending to the story. Literally everything about 3 built off from what DMC1 and yes, even select parts of DMC2 had and mixed them together to create a concoction of a game so over the top, so difficult yet rewarding, so addicting and fun that it earned its place as my favourite video game ever made. While, yes, not everything about DMC3 was perfect, some enemies suck, a few missions feel like filler or are just a pain in the ass to play, Real Guard is quite literally the only style you need to use unless going for combos with Swordmaster, had no style switching at the time, yet can now with modding or the Switch version, and only 2 guns are actually any good, yet despite that it doesn't bring down the experience and still makes it a 10 out of 10 all around, and I will be putting it in S tier without a doubt. Now, Devil May Cry 4 for me is kind of a mixed bag. I've never been so conflicted about a game in my entire life. On one hand, I love this game just as much as the others and think it's just as satisfying and rewarding to play as a good DMC game should be. But, on the other hand, this game's enemies, missions and bosses are so arse to play against for the first 100 hours that it made me despise the game and even give up on its harder difficulties when just starting out. But before that, let's talk about what I do like about the game. For starters, it's the game that introduced Nero, a young hot-headed half-demon, half-human hybrid who is badass in his own right, but still can't fully beat Dante, at least not yet. His gameplay is arguably the best part about Devil May Cry 4, and a large reason of this is due to the fact that Devil May Cry 4 is heavily tailored to Nero. You won't get this at first until you make the switch to Dante, but this game feels like shit for any character except Nero, because each enemy was tailor-made for him to be able to deal with, which unfortunately makes characters like Dante suffer in terms of varying skill with each person. Despite that, Nero is very fun to play. He gives the player 3 new gameplay elements that add more to his kit and can make him an absolute monster in the right hands. His sword Red Queen has an exceed function which adds an extra layer of damage to an attack and can even extend an attack further. When perfectly timed, Nero can get all 3 levels of exceed, and when consistently done so will give the player practically infinite critical hits for as long as they hit that timing, making him incredibly addicting to play, while also being an easier option to choose from. Nero's gun, Blue Rose, is a double-barreled revolver that shoots 2 bullets at once and can be charged 3 times to release a shot that not only does more damage, but will even explode after a small period of time, which makes it very useful for dealing with the majority, if not every enemy in the game, especially Mephisto and Faust. Nero's Demon Arm allows the player to grab a demon and swing them around to do some quick damage and even interrupt an attack. This grab is only further expedited when using Devil Trigger and can be paired with a combo to create a devastating blow. It's these changes in his gameplay that make him stand out from Dante despite their similar mannerisms, and helps Nero stand on his own 2 feet, especially when it comes to gameplay. Dante is in this game, and although I'll stand Dante as much as the next guy, I really feel like he would have been better off just not being put into this game for a couple of reasons. The first, and me personally, the biggest reason, is that he literally has no missions of his own except for 2. Each mission you play as on Nero, you play as on Dante as well, except in reverse. If Nero is going from point A to point B, Dante is going from point B to point A, fighting basically the same enemies along the way. Don't get me wrong, Dante is still incredibly fun to play and has an incredibly high skill ceiling, which makes him incredibly hard, but also incredibly rewarding. Granted, I'm not that good at him myself yet. The main issue of Dante just comes from his missions. It feels rushed, and Dante without a doubt has some of the worst missions in the game. Missions like 13, 14, and 16 come to mind whenever I think about Devil May Cry 4's level design. Dante in Devil May Cry 4 has only 3 guns and 3 weapons and a heavily reduced skill set. This makes him a character that is incredibly hard yet satisfying. Some even consider Devil May Cry 4 Dante to be the most skillful version of Dante we currently have, due to his reduced kit, yet for anyone who isn't a monster at Dante, he can feel very rough to play. He's absolutely fine in the story, but his gameplay just isn't very welcoming. With a reduced kit, he's not a character you'll get good at quickly. He has a place in Devil May Cry 4, and his gameplay is definitely fun, but like I said earlier, it just feels rushed. Devil May Cry 4's most unique aspect is that you aren't just limited to Dante, Nero, and Virgil like you are in the other games. Devil May Cry 4 was the first, and as of writing this, the last Devil May Cry game to allow the player to choose both Lady and Trish as playable characters with their own set of skills and differing gameplay. Lady is extremely broken in this game. Using nothing but guns, Lady's basically like using Gunslinger as Dante, but all the time. She can use her staple Kalina and rocket launcher, 2 pistols, and a shotgun. Her Devil Trigger isn't really an actual Devil Trigger like with Nero, Dante, and Virgil. Because she's human, Lady's DT bar fills up, and when full, she'll throw out a circle of explosive which deals a ton of damage. Lady is so broken in this game that you can practically deal with every single enemy in the game with just level 3 charge shots in the occasional trigger happy attack. If you want to turn the whole game to easy, then Lady's the way to go. Trish herself isn't as easy as Lady. In fact, if you're someone who played Lady when going for the Platinum, you'd know that Trish is the exact opposite of Lady. Trish, like Dante and Nero, actually forces you to learn the game and get good at it. You can't charge shot every enemy away like you could with Lady. You need to learn her moves and techniques to get any use out of her. Trish in this game is also incredibly fun to play, even if a spike in difficulty compared to Lady. Both of these characters are great additions, and I really wish if you were to ever get a DMC6 that Capcom would take another crack at bringing them back. The story for Devil May Cry 4 is actually my favourite in the whole series. While sure, Nero and Kyrie being step-siblings yet still dating is kinda weird, the actual story is very enjoyable. And I'd personally say that Devil May Cry 4 has some of the best, if not the best cutscenes a Devil May Cry game has to offer. The game immediately starts off with Dante and Nero fighting in an amazingly animated scene, and it just goes even further from there. While not a perfect story, it's definitely one I enjoyed thoroughly, and Devil May Cry 4 is a game that has my favourite ending out of all the Devil May Cry games. The music, Dante and Nero, it's genuinely just good stuff, and it sucks that the game is so on and off for me personally, and that's where I move on to what I hate about the game, and yeah, there's a lot. Every enemy in this game is designed in such a way to give you the hardest time possible when fighting them. Each enemy can break the flow of the game in such a bullshit way that it makes fighting them on any difficulty higher than Son of Sparta incredibly tedious, and makes the game an absolute slog of an experience. The worst of it being the infected scarecrows and assaults were such an annoying bullshit mechanic that it almost ruined the Platinum for me. You have the Scarecrows, Devil May Cry's 4 version of a lower class demon in the previous games, ones that don't give you all that much trouble, if any trouble at all, and are only there to feed style points. But then you have the Frost enemies, which make a return from Devil May Cry 1. Relatively easy to deal with, being able to take them out with a fully charged level 3 shot from Nero before being busted will usually kill them if they haven't activated Devil Trigger. They basically have the same attack pattern from Devil May Cry 1, they can hit from afar and regenerate health, which can get a little annoying, especially when there's multiple at once, but still relatively easy to deal with. There's Assaults, relatively the same as Frost, except they also have a bullshit ranged attack and can hide under the map to try and slash you out from below. Again, just the same attack patterns from Devil May Cry 1. Then there's Blitz, who I, without a doubt, hate fighting on anyone except Nero, since Nero can still knock him and practically make him a piece of cake to fight against. But on any other character, they suck to fight. This enemy will teleport around you, occasionally reaching out to try and hit you, and you can't hit it back at first because the enemy is covered in electricity, which stops all melee damage, and damages the player in return, making the only way to deal with this enemy by shooting it. Simply enough as Nero, since his level 3 charge shot does a shit ton of damage for anyone else, and it gets kind of annoying. Lady can be similar to Nero, but Lady is so overpowered in this game anyway that she turns all of this game into easy street. Even after spending all that time getting his electricity out the way and finally being allowed to deal damage, they can return back to their electrified state and, when almost killed, activate their secret move where they turn red, go even faster, and can attack multiple times, making them even more dangerous. These things can end a DMD run incredibly fast, which makes them a huge threat. There's Gladius, which is in the same ballpark as infected enemies, just awful to fight against. Cutlass are even worse. Then there's Chimera Seeds. Now, Chimera Seeds are the definition of the word arsehole. These enemies can latch onto certain other enemies such as the Scarecrows and Assaults, and every few seconds will slash at the player, disrupting the flow of the combo. This one thing makes them, without a doubt, the most annoying fucking enemies in the whole game, as there's no way to tell when they'll attack apart from a random glow, which barely gives you enough time, and there's no way to counter it aside from using guns, royal guarding them as Dante, and even stunning them, which I found out you could only do when they receive enough damage from guns, and even then it was by complete accident. A lot of the time though, when attacking these things, you'll be stuck in animation, which means no amount of skill can help you avoid it, and you're basically forced to take damage. The bosses themselves are for the most part terrible. One literally has you fighting Agnes as he spams a swarm of Gladius enemies while constantly trying to avoid taking damage from the floor and ceiling. You can stand on a little bump at the bottom, but the game doesn't tell you this, and it gives no subtle hint either, making it something most people miss on a first time playthrough. The whole fight is just avoid taking damage from electricity while also avoiding the Gladius and throwing them back. It's tedious, it sucks, and it's just not fun. Saviour is equally as annoying, but instead of Gladius, he instead just spams you with ranged attacks and constantly moves out of the way in such a specific pattern that even when doing it right, you can still fuck up. You do fight the Saviour once as Dante, where he's controlling this massive statue like it's a fucking armoured core and will attack with long-range magic or just decking the shit out of you. While it's an aesthetically pleasing boss fight, the actual gameplay is terrible. The only boss fights I actually enjoyed were Dante, Bale, and Burial, Credo, and Echidna, but all the others aren't really that enjoyable. And in true DMC fashion, you have to fight these bosses except Credo and Dante 3 separate times. There are so many enemies in this game that are designed in a way to really piss off the player and make the game tedious as all hell that it really spoiled my time with the game, especially when it came to doing the harder difficulties. And I can't in good faith recommend the game's higher difficulties when the threshold for them not being as much of a nuisance is as high as it is. Devil May Cry 4 is the most satisfying and the least satisfying at the exact same time, and it makes the game such a weird experience, and I genuinely can never decide whether or not I love the game or hate it with a passion. I would not recommend this game's platinum to anyone, and although I don't regret spending my time getting it, it's not something I will ever do again, and I am so happy that it's behind me and will be giving this game a low A tier rank. It's a great game casually, but anything above and beyond is just tedious and unfun. DMC Devil May Cry, the second black sheep of the series, but one I feel like actually deserves some credit. Yes, we all know they butchered Dante and Virgil with a less than great story, but it still had its moments, and for what it's worth, the game is actually pretty fun, aside from a few issues I have personally with the game. This reboot was Capcom's attempt to appeal to a Western audience by changing Dante's design for the worst, making him overly vulgar, and overall just a complete dickhead to be around with. Virgil going from a scarred guy searching for limitless power to a raging dictator with haircut issues.
How is this proceeding? How is this?
The story has a lot of problems and without a doubt wasn't executed well, nor was it that good of an idea to begin with, but the story does have some interesting elements, with one of the most prominent throughout the whole game being Limbo. Limbo is pretty much similar to the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's a dimension that exists parallel to the human one and lets demons fuck with humans from the sideline without being spotted, only being fully revealed to everyone later in the game. It's here where the art direction shines the most. Say what you want about the character designs, and I'm sure whatever you have to say is well founded, but you cannot scoff at the set pieces. Each mission in this game went big, and it shows. Massive buildings, all of which can change suddenly, creative cinematography, making the player feel small, but when having progressed and overcame the obstacle in the way, is now up close and standing tall. And each mission, despite having the same gameplay loop of kill demons until the end, all try to be unique in their design and flow, making it feel less tedious and more interesting to play and look at. The story isn't anything to write home about, but the art style in this game is top notch and desperately deserves the praise it needs. The story itself sucks, and everyone knows this. They turned Dante into a frat boy, made Virgil a certain type of painter,
How is this proceeding? This is a normal head.
and completely cut characters like Trish and Lady out of the picture. Oh, but don't worry, Adi Shankar has more than made up for that. I'm sure these two would get along just great. The game starts off with Dante being found by the new character Cat and then hunted down by a massive demon which he then kills. This reveals his location to Mundis, who plans to capture and kill Dante. Dante joins Cat, he meets his brother Virgil, and there's an exposition mission followed by Dante, Virgil and Cat trying to take down Mundis before she eventually gets captured herself. There's some other missions in between. We rescue Cat, Virgil quickscopes a fetus, pissing off Mundis before the three confront him face to face, where Dante and Virgil work together to finally take him down. And in the rubble of a well-fought victory, we get Virgil suddenly deciding he wants to rule humanity himself before Dante and him have their mandatory fight scene.
It was his freedom we were fighting for, not yours.
Don't be so simplistic. Humans are frail. They're like children. They need protection. Not just from others, but from themselves. Rule alone.
I didn't help you destroy Mundus so that you could take his place. I can't let you do this, Virgil.
Dante almost kills him, but spares him, thanks to this bitch. And then Dante swears to protect humans. Done, credits roll, let's go home. The story has interesting elements, especially with Limbo, but it is so awful at times that its reputation for being that game is well deserved. But the gameplay itself is another thing entirely. The gameplay in the reboot, while a lot different from the previous entries in the series, is still, in its own way, fun and engaging. You have Rebellion, a demonic axe, Angelic, Scythe, pretty much Ifrit, whatever these things are, Ebony and Ivory, a shotgun, and a grenade launcher, to allow for some versatile gameplay and allow the player to create some nice combos to get style points. DMC is the first game in the series to add things like DMC5 would use, such as style announcers. The main issue from the gameplay comes from restriction. Straight up, there's no styles in this game, like, at all. There's moves from Gunslinger which are reduced to just a simple skill set, but there's no Royal Guard, there's no Trickster, there's no Swordmaster, and there's no Gunslinger. The game removed them, making it a much more, albeit simple, yet dumbed down game compared to the others with way more depth, and this might not be a deal breaker to everyone, but if you love how in-depth the combat is in Devil May Cry, it does take some getting used to. The worst part about the combat is without a doubt the colour-coded enemies. You have multiple weapons, and in any other Devil May Cry game this would be amazing as it can further your combos, but in the reboot it's just a terrible idea. The devs thought it'd be a good idea to colour-code enemies so that in certain situations with certain enemies, you can only use either your demonic weapons or your angelic weapons. Then there's the DLC Virgil's Downfall. There's nothing to say about this DLC other than that it's a tedious, slow platformer where the enemies are underwhelming, the story is even more so, and they even managed to make Virgil, a fan favourite, boring and slow to play. Overall, the reboot isn't a terrible game, but it is by no means a good DMC game. The story sucks and the characters are awful, but the game itself has the potential to be fun. I'll put this game in C tier. Good enough game that it isn't as bad as people say, but it isn't the best, and honestly would say that people can skip this one without missing much, just like DMC 2. Although the best part about the reboot is most definitely the game's art direction and soundtrack. Devil May Cry 5 is the most recent entry in the mainline series. And Devil May Cry 5, from a gameplay standpoint, is where I have the most fun. The developers took every aspect of what made each DMC game before it good and mashed it all together to create a heavily addicting gameplay loop of creating awesome combos and getting high style rankings. It all just flows together flawlessly, creating a very good game, and would say that DMC 5 is the best DMC game purely from a gameplay perspective. Once you get good at this game, you cannot be stopped, and it allows the player to feel this flow of being an unstoppable badass, which further adds to how addictive the gameplay loop is. Devil May Cry 5's gameplay is my favourite version of the DMC gameplay loop. DMC 3 is fun, DMC 4 has the potential to be fun, but gets dragged down by just how dog shit the enemies in that game are, and the reboot, while fun, is definitely a lot easier than the other games, which isn't really a bad thing, but can make it feel just a little bit more stale. DMC 5's gameplay is the perfect mix of tough but fair. Every enemy in this game you have the ability to deal with, and pretty easily too once you learn how the enemies work. Mix enemy knowledge with perfect combos and you get a flow like no other, and it's what makes the gameplay so good to the point where I have sunk well over 100 hours into this game alone purely for the combat it offers. There's nothing like it. Yeah, sure, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance got pretty close and I also love that game, but it just doesn't hit as well as DMC. Nero's back, although with a new mechanic, Devil Breakers. Devil Breakers replaced Nero's demonic arm when Virgil ripped it off. Devil Breaker is completely different but useful in their own way, and add more to Nero's combo potential. Of course there's the staples from DMC4 such as Exceed, Charged Blue Rose Shots, Your Average Combo, certain skills make a return, and even some newer ones as well, that all make Nero who he is as a character. Dante's back, and unlike DMC4 is fun to play for both casuals, new players and veterans alike, with the potential for some really awesome combos higher than ever, with a multitude of different weapons which in all honesty puts DMC4 to shame. It's these new weapons that allow for Dante to do what he couldn't in DMC4, and that is appeal to everyone. Whether new or old, good or bad, you can have fun as Dante in DMC5 just how it should be. There's a new character called V, which, in all honesty, I don't really like, and more often than not will just outright avoid his missions. V is Virgil's human half, who he was separated from. He has 3 main attacks: Griffin, the ranged attack, Shadow, the close range attack, and Nightmare being his DT. V is the worst character to play as in my opinion. The whole character being boiled down to just 3 buttons really makes him unfun to play when compared to the other characters the game has to offer. Just 3 buttons with the occasional spam dodge. He's not bad per se, just that the others are better. Then there's fan favourite Virgil. Virgil is as OP as you can get in a video game. He is incredibly strong and easy to use, which makes him one of the most enjoyable characters to play as in the game. He has so many attacks that mixing it with his DT could make for some incredibly complex yet just as equally cool looking combos than any other character in the game. He's overpowered, he doesn't stand for nonsense, and is such a joy to play as. The story in Devil May Cry 5 is one that's enjoyable and introduces some ties to Dante and Virgil's backstory that we haven't really seen before, not counting the reboot. There's familiar faces and some new ones as well. The story starts off with the group attacking this demon called Urizen before ultimately being overpowered and forced to retreat. A month later, and we're introduced to a new character called Nicoletta Goldstein, who's the granddaughter of Nell Goldstein and the daughter of Agnes from Devil May Cry 4.
Oh, you are the infamous Dante. I'm Nicoletta Goldstein. Sound familiar? My grandmother is Nell Goldstein, the gunsmith that made all your fancy weapons that you got strapped back there. Yeah, there she is.
You don't much look like her.
Yeah, I got my looks from my daddy.
She's basically a gunsmith, and she's the one that created the Devil Breakers that Nero uses, so you go to her if you ever need a refill. We're treated to one of the many amazing action sequences in the game with arguably the best song in the whole game to back it up. Another great cutscene, and then you're back to gameplay with probably one of the lesser good boss fights in Devil May Cry. A lot of back and forth happens between Urizen and the group before it's revealed that Urizen is in fact Virgil himself. Nero finds out Virgil is his father, and then the game segues into probably the most recognisable cutscene in the entire game, one that spawned many memes. And for good reason. It's a damn good cutscene and one that does a great job in hyping up the player for the battle that's about to go down. Dante fights Virgil, Virgil and Dante almost kill each other but are stopped by Nero, who has awakened his demonic power, using it to defeat Virgil. Dante and Virgil then head into the underworld, and then the credits roll. Now, I am paraphrasing here, and I am grossly underselling how the story is because I'm explaining it in a nutshell, but the story is entertaining. It's over the top and it's campy, which is what I love about the DMC games. It fits right in with the others and allows for some great character interaction. Overall, while DMC5 might not be my favourite overall, coming from a purely gameplay standpoint, it is without a doubt a mixture of the best aspects of every Devil May Cry game before it. It fits right at home with the other games and has some great character interactions, and the combat is the main reason why I keep coming back to it, so I can confidently give this one an S tier ranking. Solid story, great graphics, and nearly perfect gameplay makes DMC5 a must play for anyone getting into the series. And that's all my rankings. Obviously mine won't line up with what someone else thinks, but that's what's so interesting about opinions. They allow you to get a different perspective on something you're passionate about. I implore you to play these games if you haven't already. They are such a good time, and while not all of them are good, there's 3 games that are incredible to play and I would happily consider them to be the best games of all time.